Projection. You're dating someone who cheats, but somehow you're the one accused of being unfaithful. That's projection. It's when someone takes their own flaw, wraps it up in gift paper, and hands it to you like it was yours all along. You'll hear it in arguments. They're the one lying, but somehow you're the dishonest one. They're furious, so suddenly you have an anger problem. It works because it scrambles your brain into defense mode. Instead of calling out their behavior, you're stuck justifying yourself, which is exactly what they want. The worst part? The more outrageous their accusation, the more energy you waste proving it's not true, while the real culprit stands there calm and collected, watching you defend crimes they committed. Emotional blackmail. On the surface, it sounds like love or desperation, but underneath, it's pure control. If you leave me, I'll hurt myself. If you don't do what I want, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. That's emotional blackmail. Threats and guilt used like handcuffs, locking you into choices you never wanted to make. The reason it works is simple. We're wired to avoid hurting the people we care about, even if they're the ones twisting the knife. They set up a trap where the cost of saying no feels unbearable, so you give in. And every time you give in, their leverage grows stronger. Emotional blackmail doesn't just bend your decisions, it rewrites your sense of responsibility. Their feelings become your burden, their threats become your cage. And the worst part? You start to believe that keeping them stable isn't just your problem, it's your duty. Stonewalling. Ever tried to argue with a brick wall? That's what stonewalling feels like, except the wall is someone you care about, and the silence is deliberate. They don't shout, they don't explain, they don't even flinch. They just shut down, leaving you stranded mid-sentence. The power move here isn't in what they say, but in what they don't. Every unanswered question, every stare at the phone that never lights up, every night spent next to someone who pretends you don't exist. It all pushes the burden back on you. You start raising your voice, yelling just to break through, until somehow you're the one who looks unhinged while they sit there calm, untouched. Their silence forces you to carry the entire argument on your shoulders, and the more you push, the worse you look. While you turn red in the face, they don't have to prove a thing. You've already become the villain in the story they wanted to tell. Future faking. They tell you about the dream vacation, the cozy house you'll share, the kids you'll raise, the life you'll build together. Sounds perfect, except none of it is real. Future faking is a manipulation that runs on promises with no expiration date. Every plan dangled in front of you isn't meant to happen. It's bait to keep you invested. Why leave when you're this close to that beach trip, that proposal, that happily ever after? The fantasy is designed to glue you in place. And here's where it really bites. You start making real sacrifices for fake tomorrows. You skip other opportunities because you've been told you already have plans. You swallow today's red flags because it'll be different once you move in together. By the time it finally hits you that the future was never coming, your present has already been wasted. Shaming and humiliation. Your partner cuts you down in front of their friends or makes a joke at your expense at a party, and everyone laughs while you stand there pretending it doesn't bother you. That's humiliation, turning your embarrassment into their entertainment. Humiliation has a quieter twin, and that's shame. Shame doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it's just one cutting remark dropped in private about your weight, your intelligence, your worth. Nobody else hears it, but you do, and you replay it on a loop long after the moment is over. Humiliation stings in the crowd. Shame lingers when you're alone. Together, they do more than just bruise your ego. They train you. You avoid the next argument, the next joke, the next reminder that you can be reduced in an instant. And soon, you start managing yourself the way they want, just to dodge the next blow. Gaslighting. You remember your partner yelling at you last night. The words, the tone, the slammed door. It's clear in your head. But the next morning, they look at you blankly and say, "That never happened." You're imagining things. At first, you try to brush it off. But when this kind of denial keeps happening, about what was said, what was done, even what you saw with your own eyes, you start questioning your own memory. That's gaslighting. Rewriting your reality until you can't trust it anymore. The tactic works because memory isn't a perfect recording. It's flexible. So when someone insists over and over that you've misremembered, your brain starts bending to their version of events. You don't just doubt the argument, you doubt yourself. And once you stop trusting your own perception, you lean on theirs instead. At that point, they're not just winning arguments, they're deciding what your reality is. And when someone else controls your reality, they control you. Moving the goalposts. You apologize, but it wasn't the right words. You spend more time with them, but it's still not enough. You finally do exactly what they asked, and suddenly, the rules change. One day they insist all they want is honesty, and the next, they tear you apart for being too blunt. Every time you meet the standard they set, they shift it just a little further away. The cruelty of this tactic is that it makes approval impossible to earn. You pour more effort, more time, more of yourself into proving you measure up, while they sit back and rewrite the rules mid-game. You're running a race where the finish line can never be reached. Over time, you stop asking why the goalposts move at all. You just accept that it's your job to keep running. And the more exhausted you get, the easier it is for them to claim that you were never good enough to begin with. Withholding information. It's not always what someone tells you that matters, it's what they leave out. Like when your partner doesn't mention the text they sent their ex, or they conveniently skip the part of the story that would change how you see it. They didn't technically lie, but you were never given the whole truth either. The power of withholding is that you don't notice it at first. You keep filling in the blanks yourself, making excuses, assuming they would have told you if it mattered. You end up doubting your own instincts instead of questioning why you're always the last to know. And once you catch on, it's already too late. They hold the missing details like currency, deciding what you get to know and when. You can't argue against what hasn't been said, but you still feel the weight of something missing, like a puzzle with the most important pieces locked away. Lovebombing. At first, it feels like a dream. Constant texts, dramatic declarations, big gestures that make you feel like the center of their universe. Nobody has ever made you feel this wanted so quickly. And that's exactly the point. It isn't about love, it's about speed and saturation. The attention comes in a flood so intense that you don't have time to step back and ask whether any of it's real. Compliments stack on top of gifts. Promises stack on top of future plans, until your sense of connection is built on sheer volume, not substance. When that flood suddenly dries up, the game reveals itself. It wasn't love, it was a setup. The point of the overwhelm was to hook you fast, to build a dependency before you even knew you had one. Once you're attached, the silence or withdrawal hits twice as hard. Now the balance shifts. You're working to earn back something that was never real in the first place. Negging. It sounds like a compliment, but there's a catch. You'd be really attractive if you lost a little weight. You're smart for someone who never finished college. That's negging. Praise with an insult hidden inside. It works because compliments are supposed to lift you up. But when the praise is poisoned, you feel the need to prove yourself worthy. Instead of questioning them, you start second-guessing yourself. Maybe you should lose the weight. Maybe you're not as intelligent as you thought. That's where the manipulation takes hold. You're not just dealing with an insult, you're stuck chasing validation from the same person who cut you down. And once they've got you chasing, they control when or if you ever feel good enough. Guilt tripping. You say no to something simple, a favor you can't do, a plan you can't make, and suddenly you're not just declining, you're letting them down. After everything I've done for you, you can't do this one thing for me? I guess you don't really care. With one sentence, your reasonable boundary gets reframed as selfishness. They don't argue the choice, they argue your character. Instead of standing by your decision, you find yourself defending who you are. You're not fighting about weekend plans anymore, you're fighting the label of being ungrateful, careless, or cold. And in that fight, the easiest way out is to give in. Once you've caved, the pattern takes hold. You stop making choices freely and start shaping them around one goal, avoiding that accusation again. Each time you give in, more of your independence erodes. Before long, your decisions aren't yours at all. They're just the path of least resistance, designed to keep the guilt off your back and leading exactly where they want you to go. Polarization. They don't just want your attention, they want it uncontested. So they plant doubts about your closest people. Your friends don't really get you. Your family never wanted us together. Piece by piece, they drive a wedge between you and everyone else who could give you perspective. Once the circle shrinks, you've got nowhere to turn. Every outside voice sounds suspect. Every bit of advice feels loaded. And while you're busy questioning everyone else's loyalty, the manipulator cements their own. The end game is isolation. But by the time you notice, it doesn't look like they cut you off. It looks like you chose it. Either way, now that everyone else is gone, you're entirely in their control. If any of these tricks felt a little too familiar, you're definitely not alone. Subscribe for more on psychology, human behavior, and the patterns we don't always see.